Hello everyone, we're here at the Calabasas Library Authors Night. I'm Karen Foley, your host, and our guest is Dr. Milton Chu, who wrote 2 novels that we're going to discuss today, who's also an ophthalmologist by profession.
That's
That's
right.
an interesting combination. Where were you raised, Dr. Chu?
Well, I was raised in the East Coast in the New Jersey area, and then at a young age my parents saw the light and they came to California. My dad took on a job as a professor at UCLA teaching computer science.
Good UCLA.
Yeah.
Big Bruin fan.
Oh, good.
Yes. And your mother is an
important.
artist.
Yeah, my mom's an artist. She's a very talented artist, and in fact she's just finishing a one-woman show over at Culver City at the Fresh Paint Contemporary Gallery, and it's a magnificent show. She's got 25 to 30 really significant major pieces on display there.
But you didn't go in either direction.
Well, I think I sort of used both talents for my parents to do something slightly different, medicine, and now some writing.
What did you start your interest in? Did you think you were going to go into medicine, or was your inclination towards literature, writing, things of that nature?
I think my inclination was towards medicine, and then later on when I was in college, I decided to challenge myself to do something more, and so as a result I decided to really dive into literature and try to read and write, and while I still had the chance. Because after when you go to medical school and you practice, most of the times you have no time for anything else.
But pre-med, there was no time. How could there be time as a pre-med student?
I think I made time for some reason.
Did you do a lot of studying for medicine before you went to med school? Is that how you found your inclination, or were you between 2 professions?
You know, my dad, since he was a professor, he always liked to give me these summer projects. And at the time, I really was not in the mood to do any of these projects. But one of them was to read up on what it was like to be a doctor and what you had to do, and to write a report about it. So I kind of learned quite a bit about that. And in spite of that, I still decided to become a doctor. So I guess it was for me. Medicine was for me.
What attracted you to ophthalmology?
I really had no interest at all. I didn't even understand what ophthalmology was when thinking about a doctor when I was younger. But I decided to volunteer at the hospital.
What hospital?
UCLA, of course.
Of course.
And so I went to the emergency room, which is where anyone interested in becoming a doctor wants to see. And they told me flatly that they have no need for any volunteers, and thank you very much. And then I thought, well, okay, I'll go to the hospital right next door, and I'll ask them if they need someone on the wards. And they told me, no, they're all full. So then I was really dejected, and the nurse must have sensed that, so she said, why don't you ask at the eye center if they need...
the Jules Stein Eye Center?
The Jules Stein Eye Center, okay. And so I said, okay, I will, but somehow that didn't seem like medicine, real medicine to me at the time. Oh. So I was almost going to walk past it, and I said, I'll go in. So I went in and talked to the nurse, and she said, well, we have all the volunteers we need too. And then I sort of complained to her. I said, I'm willing to work for free. I just want to get some exposure and experience and try to help. And then she said to me, come back next weekend. We'll find something for you to do. And that's how I got interested in ophthalmology.
Direct path?
Somewhat direct, I went through and was a volunteer and for a couple summers, and then I wanted to do something a little more technical, and I knew they couldn't let me, interact too much with patients, but I knew that they were doing research there. So I thought maybe I could get a research position or something to do some work during the summers. And I was able to find something in one of the labs and write a paper, and so that's actually my first published work was in ophthalmology.
How about the
Thinking
family?
back.
What about the family dynamics? Did your mother approve of going into the medical field?
Yeah, my mom thought that I would be very good as a doctor, so she was very supportive. And so was my dad. I think, too.
But you have to have some artistic ability to work on eyes. It's a very exacting, small subject.
Yeah,
As far as size
that's
goes
true.
and what you're working on, you have
Yeah.
to be delicate and true to the line and proportion.
Yeah, you should
Can't
teach
be very creative.
you should teach ophthalmology. I think you have a natural natural feel for the subject. But it's interesting. There are a lot of, even within this very small space, which is the eye, there is still a great deal of mysteries, you know. So every day you can find something wonderful and beautiful, and also something inscrutable, something you can't explain. So
What happens
it's
if
fun.
you can't explain something?
Well, you keep working on it, you know, and hopefully you will find some solutions.
Do you do a lot of surgery on the eyes?
I do quite a bit, yeah.
Mainly what?
Oh, cataract and
Cataract.
eyelid and laser. And,
Oh, so you do
yeah, glaucoma.
cosmetic as well?
I do some cosmetic and some reconstructive work for people who have some sort of abnormality or they have a cancer involving the eyelid skin.
Do you do any painting or anything like that on the side?
No, I've tried, but no, that talent exists solely in our family and my mother. But I do find that I'm creative, and that's why I decided that to do some writing.
Did you start traveling before you wrote?
Yeah, we traveled a lot
This I can
when
tell
I
in
was
your
younger,
books.
because my mom loved to travel, and she loved to go to the museums, the best museums throughout the world. So that's usually how we planned our summer, or how she planned our summer vacations. And I got dragged along, and so I think somehow it maybe sank in a little bit, you know, the idea of the importance of art in life, the beauty of art, you know, that you need art to balance the science and the technical things in a person's life. And although I don't necessarily recall being enthusiastic about going to the museums, now I can't think of living without something artistic in my life.
What do you remember as being your favorite museum?
I think the Louvre. It had a lot of Egyptian things there, a lot of mummies. So as a boy, you know, I thought the mummies were pretty cool.
Well, it's as good as the Cairo Museum.
Yeah, I've been to the
Actually
Cairo
sat-
Museum
Okay.
also.
That's sort of disappointing.
I know, once you've been to the Louvre, you know.
Or even the Metropolitan in New York.
Wow, that's a wonderful museum. I've been there too.
I try to go there at least once a year, once every 2 years.
Good for the soul.
It is wonderful for the soul. You leave with such a feeling of pleasure and beauty in your life, and
That's true.
peace,
See?
and color, and it's a good way to end the day or to start a day.
Yeah.
to go to
And
the museum.
as a doctor and someone who believes in science, I see the art in science too, you know. Good science, there's always something very, very timeless and artistic about it.
But was literature emphasized when you were growing up? I know art was from your mother. What about reading and literature and the great novelists, great authors?
Yeah,
of the
they always
time?
encouraged me to read rather than watch TV, you know, and I always liked reading. I don't know if I was a good reader necessarily, but I liked the way a good book could sort of take you someplace, you know. It was it sort of stimulated your imagination, and I guess I had maybe a pretty vivid imagination as a kid, so I enjoyed that part of literature.
Now, when you traveled, have you traveled all over the world? From your books, I know you've been to Europe.
Yeah, I've been pretty lucky. I've traveled, you know, most. There are a few places left to see, so
What is left to see?
maybe Scandinavia and maybe South America.
South America's good.
Yeah. So you've been?
Well, yes. And like your parents, I took my children every year, but this was over the Christmas, Hanukkah holidays, or as we now call them, the winter holidays in school.
Yeah.
And I did it for probably the same reason your parents took you. I took them so they would know, first of all, that the world was not Calabasas.
Calabasas is a wonderful place.
But it's not the world.
That's true.
And they should know who and what and how and everything that goes on in the world.
No, you're absolutely right.
And see some of the sites and the history and learn something about the people and the cultures and the art.
Yeah, it makes for a great education, right?
Wonderful education.
I totally agree with you.
So I lost one son to traveling.
What do you mean?
I did never see him anymore.
Oh, I see.
And the other one gave her a good background. And I think it's very important. It's like going to college, if you can do it in the right way.
Right.
To see all that there is to see. So you went to Stanford. What's this? You didn't go to undergraduate at UCLA.
Well, I went to medical school at UCLA. I went to Stanford, yeah, for my undergraduate. And that's why, Stanford has got so many great departments, and that's why I said, while I'm here, I want to take advantage. The English department was, is fairly well renowned, so I just said, I'd like to.
So you went to the English, you studied English?
It was a special humanities program, but all the professors were basically from the English staff. So I felt very lucky because you could meet with them one-on-one, and once a week or once every other week, and talk about literature. In the end, you had to write for my particular program. I had to write a thesis, but I didn't mind that.
What did you write your thesis on?
I wrote it on Dostoevsky and Conrad.
Both?
Both authors, yeah, writing about that period in the literature and history, and also their perspectives on fate. It was pretty serious in college to write about that, but it seemed appropriate at the time.
Well, let's take a quick break now from Stanford, and we'll get to UCLA Medical School and how you combine both medicine and writing. And stick with me, audience, for just a very quick break, and Dr. Milton Chu will return.
Where is this guy?
So thirsty.
I hear he travels from the north.
Look!
That one's really dry.
LA is in a drought, yet over half of our drinking water is being used for landscaping. But it doesn't have to be that way. Just 1 inch of rain can yield thousands of gallons of water for use in landscaping and saves drinking water for drinking. Rain barrels, cisterns, and curb cuts are just a few ways to save water and energy. For more, visit LADWP and the Bay Foundation online.
We're back to Author's Night, and our guest, Dr. Milton Chu, with his 2 novels, Capri Ripples and Telling Stories. I read both of them and enjoyed both of them.
Oh, thank you so
for
much.
sending them to me. I learned during our break that you have a patent.
I do.
Patent pending or patent accomplished?
It's actually patent accomplished.
Okay.
And it's exciting because now it's moving into the final stages for FDA approval. And that was a very, very interesting process to go through.
What is it a pending patent on?
It has to do with the implants that I work with. Since I do cataract surgery, as you know, we remove the natural lens and we replace it with an artificial lens. And I had an idea about how to use micro color spots on the lens. So I started the process and had the idea and developed it, created the patent, talked to a lot of lens companies, and then decided I'd take it to the final stage, which is to get it approved by the FDA. And that's an interesting experience. It's a bit like that scene in Flashdance when the dancer has to dance in front of all the judges. Unfortunately, I don't wear a leotard as well as that Flash dancer does, but No, I got to present in Washington, and it was fun. It was
How long did it take you?
It took me about, to go through this FDA approval process. It's still ongoing, but it's been about 6 months.
Long time.
And I did a lot of writing for that too. It's more scientific, regulatory writing.
How'd you get
it
an
was
idea
fun.
for that? You saw that there was definite need for it when
I
you
think
did
so,
surgery?
Yeah, I think so. And I developed some prototypes and presented it. And the companies liked it. They just wanted to know how to get it FDA approved. So I thought I'd figure out that last piece of the puzzle.
Do you have to pay for all this research and all of the
Unfortunately, someone
procedure?
has to pay for it, and right now it's me. But maybe later on it'll be commercialized.
But once it's patented, then do you sell it to a company or do you
Exactly.
manufacture it yourself?
No, this is something which is an improvement, which can be added on to a number of different platforms, different devices that already exist there. So kind of like how safety features, such as an airbag, improve the safety of a car, so the car manufacturers would license the technology, so that way they can offer these improvements,
And you'd be the only one they go to
hopefully.
at this point.
Yeah.
That's very exciting.
It is fun. It's exciting.
So you're very creative.
See, I got that from, I guess, my mom and maybe my dad, the engineering side of things.
Very good, very
So
good.
I'm lucky.
Yes, you're very, well, and probably very talented too, because you just don't think of these things unless you've got some brains, some talent, some creativity, all of that, and some gumption to do it.
That's you know what? I'm going to come here every Wednesday. You'll pick me up in the middle of the week when I need it the most.
I'll be the
There you
encouraging
go.
mama, not the critiquing mama. Okay, now your first book was
Capri Ripples.
Capri Ripples. You must have really loved Capri.
I did, actually. I was there for a few days with my girlfriend, and we had a wonderful time. And then something really unexpected and kind of something like a little foolishness can lead to something really dramatic. And it was the last day we were on the island, and we were trying to pack in as much as we could. Of course, you can never see everything, We decided in the afternoon, or I decided we should rent a little boat and take a tour around the island. And by the time we had toured the island, we wanted to stop in and see the Blue Grotto.
Yes.
We hadn't seen it, partly because you have to wake up really early in the morning, and we were, with jet lag, we were kind of late risers. And so we moored our boat to a buoy and decided to swim in. And it was pretty dramatic and scary because the tide has risen by the afternoon.
Yeah, I have never
And
wanted to swim in that grotto.
And it was really, really scary. And it struck me,
Just the two of you?
just the two of us, yeah. It was
That
dark.
is.
The sun was setting, and the
Especially
water
in
was
that-
getting rough, and the water was getting cold too. And we were also a bit tired because we'd been running around all day. And
Very dangerous.
yeah, it was very dangerous. And so anyway, we got back into the boat and drove it back to the harbor. And when I turned the boat in, the owner of the rental shop, asked me if I enjoyed it and everything. And, I said, yeah, I enjoyed it, but it was a little scary. And I told her the story, and she said, never get off the boat, number one. Number two, never go try to swim in the Blue Grotto by yourself, especially at night, because, it's dark, and people sometimes they get lost in there, they don't
Very
come out.
disorienting.
Yeah. And she was right. So anyway, on the way home, sitting on the train from Naples, going back to the airport, I started thinking about, how interesting, now that, we were safe and back on dry land, I was thinking how interesting that whole experience was. It was an adventure. And so then I thought, well, maybe I can use that in a story and write something, So I spent a year thinking about the characters and how I wanted to tell the story. And then a year after planning everything or getting everything pretty much in place in my mind, Then I decided to write.
So you base a
pen to
lot of
paper.
these things on your own experiences.
Some of them, yeah. Some of them are from different experiences, different books. Movies too. I'm from Southern California.
Some
I'm
very
influenced by
erotic scenes.
There are some charged scenes in there.
And why not? It added interest. I liked it.
Yeah, I thought, well, okay, I'd like to write something that's intriguing and that's maybe a little shocking, but not too
Not
shocking.
shocking. Intriguing was the word.
and
Suspenseful, intriguing, edgy.
It's a little. I wanted it to be edgy.
Yeah.
I'm glad you got that, or I'm glad you felt that.
So how did you get that published?
I tried to shop it around to literary agents, and I didn't get that much interest. One of them, was nice enough to actually write a blurb to me and told me that they're having a hard enough time just placing works for their signed authors, but they said it's interesting, And then I tried to submit it to some small publishers. It was accepted by one, but we had a sort of a philosophical disagreement. One was as you alluded to, she had a morals clause, so I flunked that. And then because she didn't believe in having any sex in the books.
How boring.
Okay, and then there was one having to do with my tense choice, because although I'd written it in past tense, I decided that it might work better with present tense, and that's not really that controversial. Many books nowadays are written in present tense,
Well, you feel more of a part of it.
Yeah, and then there's a lot of flashbacks, and so I thought it'd be more clear to the reader what was a flashback happening in the past versus what was happening in the present. And but she was against that, and she said she wouldn't edit the book unless it was traditional past tense. So then I sort of was kind of really disappointed and depressed, and then I looked out again and found another small publisher who accepted it. But he too had a problem with my tense choice, So then I decided, well, maybe I'll self-publish. And that's what I
Very
did.
independent.
That's what I did.
And why not? It's your words.
I got my editing done.
Yes, wasn't this, you told me something about your editor. Didn't he also edit another bestseller?
Yeah, she was in the traditional publishing world for many, many years, and now does very well as a freelance editor. And she edited 50 Shades of Grey.
Did that influence your book at all?
She didn't really influence the book in terms of the content, the sexual content, but I would have to say, of course. I mean, 50 Shades of Grey was a phenomenon, so anyone interested in books or writing knew about it. So I said, okay, maybe I should have a little something in my book too. I don't think what I wrote is anywhere near
well, it's
as
not
extreme.
an erotica book.
No, it's not soft porn. Let's be honest. 50 Shades of Grey is soft. But anyway, I think my editor was probably, when she read my sex scenes, I think she was probably like relieved, that I wasn't making her relive, that whole 50 Shades of Grey editing. I'm sure she probably,
Did you read the 50 Shades of Grey?
just the dirty parts, No, I read little bits here and there.
I don't think it was all, what do I know? But it was,
It was tame for you, right?
it was no game changer.
Okay.
Okay, so you like your publishing. Do they come to you? Do you come to them? Do you know
it was
these
I just happened to
illustrators?
look at book covers, obsessively, especially over the last final months of writing, and I found the name of a book designer, and I sent her an email, and she works for the big two or the big three nowadays, and so I sent her an email and sort of apologetically, saying, I'm sorry to bother you, you don't know me, but I have this book and I was wondering if you could help me with the cover.
Is this the Capri Ripple?
Yeah. And so I think the email back to me sort of set the tone, and it was like, how did you get my email? And I Googled it or something, and then she said, I explained myself again to her, and she says, well, I'm on contract with, Random House, and so I only deal with really professional work. So I said, okay, can I send you something? She said, send it to me, I'll read it, and she liked it. So that's how we
Did you do
started to work together.
telling stories also?
And she also did the cover of Telling
Yeah.
Stories. So at the end of the book jacket design process, the interior design, I asked her, I said, I think I still need to go through some editing. Do you have anyone you know who could help me? And so eventually, through a couple people, I found my editor. So.
But you went from a novel to short stories.
I know, it's kind of backwards, right? Usually writers go from
Usually the
short
other way
stories
around.
and then put them together to write a novel. But I was never really interested in the short story form. And so that's why I decided to write a novel from the onset. And I had actually tried to write a novel, years ago, but I didn't know how to finish it. I didn't know enough about the mechanics of writing in terms of, character development and plot development. And so I couldn't finish it. So when I started Capri Ripples, that's why I spent a whole year planning, because I didn't want to fail. I wanted to be able to complete it. So I was very happy to complete that. Then afterwards, I wanted to write something more. I wanted to write another novel, but I didn't know on what particular topic. And I'd already now realized the investment of time. It's like when people are building a house, In the beginning, it sounds wonderful over a glass of wine and dinner, and then about 8 months into it, when the contractor is sending you a bill and you and your wife are arguing and at each other's throat, you realize, gosh, this is the last house I'm ever going to build, right? But no, I decided that, okay, maybe I'll write a few pages for something and try out a couple different ideas, and then pick one to write another novel. And then I got interested in this whole short story art form, because it's a very different process. You need to. It's sort of like writing one of these, hit songs. It needs to be over in like 3.5 minutes or something. And the short story is, anywhere from 8 to 20 pages or something. And then I started reading a lot of. I started reading Carver and Cheever, and I read some of F. Scott Fitzgerald's short stories, And then all of a sudden I got bitten by the bug, and so I decided, okay, I'd like to do my own and try to come up with something interesting, something that really stories that haven't been the reader hasn't seen before, in terms of the content.
And a lot of your travels come through in those too, New York, Paris.
Yeah, that's true. I think when you write, it's always easiest if you write about something that you really know. So that way you don't have to, I think it rings more true. But then again, there are very talented authors who have never been to these places they write about, and they're very convincing, So
And all your personal experiences are going into that also?
it's fiction.
Well, we'll talk more about
fiction.
that
I've
during
got very
our...
interesting friends and a very interesting imagination. All right.
We'll talk about that more honestly during our third segment with our author, Dr. Milton Chu, and his Telling Stories. Thank you very much. Stay with us.
To stop pretending we have plenty of water. Los Angeles is in a drought, but there are ways you can help. Replacing lawns with rain gardens and California-friendly plants is just one of many solutions. For more info on conserving water and saving energy, please visit LADWP and the Bay Foundation online.
We're back. It's Author's Night here at the Calabasas Library with Dr. Milton Chu, who's telling us now about his short stories called Telling Stories and the change from novels to short stories. When you do write, how do you write? Do you just sit there and it comes to you and you stop whatever you're doing, tell the patient, just a moment, I'll be back? Or do you set aside a particular time and sit down there with either your computer, typewriter, notes by hand?
I think if you really want to write, you kind of have to do it, or naturally want to do it almost on a daily basis. And I think that just makes it, that just exercises that part of your brain, you know, to get the words out or to get the ideas out. And I do something that's really bad. I use my iPhone. You know, that's the worst thing for your eyes, by the way. Don't do that. But I do a lot on my iPhone because I have these ideas. And you're right. You know, I'm in the office and I'm in between patients, or sometimes, you know, I'm at lunch and I have something and I'll just go on the phone and tap away and get a couple paragraphs down, and then rework that and rework that and rework that, you know. But, you know, I would usually go home at night and after dinner start to work on the computer.
So you're very well disciplined.
I don't know if I'm disciplined. I think I'm just persistent. You know, I get that from my dad, I think. Stubborn, persistent, you know, which is kind of the way to get things done in your life many times, you know. Bigger projects require a tough boss, and I guess I'm a tough boss. But it's interesting when you're really involved in trying to like solve, you know, the tangles on the page, then you will sometimes get inspiration, or you get a light bulb goes off, and then you just get out of bed or get off the couch and you go and you work on it and you complete the work that way, kind of, you know. It's a little obsessive, you know. But I think most artists or most writers, I think they are obsessive when it comes to the work. You know, they're always thinking about it. They're always, you know, somewhat, you know, at either stage of being unhappy with it and wanting to, you know, improve it, or else they've got something inspirational and now they want to, you know, to realize it in some way.
Or diligent.
Diligent, that's a good word.
Well, I would like you, if you could read something from your short stories.
Sure, I'd be
doesn't
delighted to.
It's, if you claim it's not about you, maybe one
not
of your
about me.
friends. Of course not.
So, I remember you like one of the stories that takes place in Paris, which is one of the cities that I've actually lived in and I love.
What languages do you speak, by the way?
Mainly English.
Mainly English.
On a good day. On a good day, I can string a few sentences together. All right. So anyway, this story is called The Rendezvous. I'm not going to be able to read the whole thing, but I'll just read the opening passages. It was so cold that night that the key to the car door didn't work. He tried to examine the key and lock more closely, but couldn't see in the darkness. The mechanism was probably frozen solid as a block of ice, or so he thought. It was a bitter cold night, and his car had been sitting parked on the street since the early evening. He leaned over and waited for his eyes to adjust. Finally, he saw that he'd missed the slot for the key entirely. That's why it didn't go in. He tried again, but the door still didn't budge. After another try, he realized he'd been turning the key the wrong way. So he twisted it the other way, and after a slow, stiff click, the door popped open. Pleased with this small victory, he smiled and quickly got into the car. Hoping to find some relief from the cold, he moved around on the seat, searching for a warmer spot. But every inch was like ice. His breath was visible inside the car as he searched for the ignition. Craning his neck around the steering wheel, he fumbled with the key, and then after a few attempts, the car groaned and the engine started up. When he tried to shift the metal gear lever into first, it wouldn't budge. The gearbox was frozen solid. So he told himself, be patient and wait for things to warm up. As he sat shivering, he recalled another cool reception. The first time he met her, his lover. She was the most alluring woman seated at the champagne bar of the Georges V, the most famous and sumptuous hotel in all of Paris. When he tried to catch her eye, she, like the door lock, had refused him. But that night, he was feeling uncharacteristically brave. Undeterred in spite of being ignored, he somehow mustered up the courage to approach her and say hello. She said nothing back to him, of course. Being a beautiful woman, Many men had ventured to get her attention. Finally, he thought to ask a question about her dress. She looked over at him. The sheer luminous quality of her eyes made him forget everything. And even though he could barely think about what to say next, she began to talk.
I would hope that that was a personal experience, because in Paris, that's what it's all about. And especially
No.
at the end, when it's almost unrequited love. That's what Paris is about. It's
Well,
beautiful and
and
tempestuous when you arrive, and sad and leaving something behind when you leave. You never quite leave all of yourself. You always leave some part of you in Paris. Some part of yourself always stays there.
I think I agree.
So thank you very much, and good luck on your patent.
Thank you.
And is there a way that you would like people to reach you, or how to get your books?
My books are on Amazon.
On Amazon.com, and we'll have copies of both here in our library.
My pleasure.
Our pleasure. And thank you very much. And thank you, Library, City of Calabasas, Media Operations Department. And with my usual goodbye, you will be the same person in 5 years as you are today, except for the people that you meet and the books that you read. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, Karen.